Welcome to a new episode of the VSP Podcast. I'm Anthony. So today we're going to dive into how we organize our speed, change of direction, agility, all that type of stuff. So let's dive in. All right, guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we organize our speed training, right? Like, somebody comes in, they're going through a workout. How do we organize it in a way that makes sense? I think it's important to have structure and organization, as a coach, but also it's easier for us to communicate the reasoning why, to the athlete, right? Because, if you're just doing a random wall drill or random, banded, A march or whatever the case may be, it needs to have some transfer over so the athlete can feel it in whatever sprint that they're going to end up doing or change direction, whatever it is. Because far too often, one of my biggest pet peeves, and there's a lot of great facilities out there, especially on Long Island, that do a great job. But some places it's just randomness, where they're just doing stuff just to do it. Maybe they saw it on Instagram, or they think it's hard, or it's going to make the athlete sweat, whatever the case may be. There's no thought process, right? For us, we clearly are working on an acceleration, top end speed, change direction, deceleration, most of those types of qualities throughout our weekly workouts. Some people don't even know what those words mean or how to work on them or how to individually approach each aspect. So make sure when you're, programming or as an athlete, if you're going to the field, have a thought process, behind what you're doing, right? Have some guidance because it will make your training way better. And the intent will be correct. So the way we typically do it, right? So let's say we're on an acceleration day. Athlete warms up, they go through an acceleration-based, warm up. The first thing they're going to do is what we call a skill, right? Skill is, right, we're working on a specific characteristic of acceleration, right? So maybe that is hip extension. Maybe that is foot strike. Maybe that is posture, right? Something along those lines, right? So, if I'm going to work on, let's just say, foot strike, I'm going to maybe do like a 3-inch punch drill where just focusing on really driving down and back with a sharp shin angle. Okay? Then after I do the skill, then I'm going to go into a drill, right? Something that's a little bit faster pace, but they're still thinking about what they're doing. So, for let's say if we're going off their foot strike, right? Maybe I'm doing something along the lines of a backwards jump into a sprint. Right, so I'm still working on driving down and back, right? But it's going to be obviously a little bit further out, and they're going to be applying more force. It's going to be faster, but not 100%, right? It's going to be still confined to a time or a volume or duration that's not going to fatigue the athlete too much, and it will also allow them to still think and for me to cue, and it'll keep it slowed down. And then after they do that, right? They do the skill, they do the drill. They do a sprint, right? Maybe something timed or reactionary, right? I need them to just get after it. Yeah, maybe I'll give them one cue to think about, right? That came from the scale that we just did. But, I really just kind of want them to sprint. Then, I don't want them doing too much thinking because, again, that's the other side of the spectrum, right? Or one side, you have just randomness that I see, people posting online, they have their whiteboard and it's just random hard sprint drills. And on the other end, it's just too much thinking. And then we're taking away from them being an athlete or being a kid and just actually sprinting because that's always going to be the best way to get faster, as we know. So that's how we organize, our speed stuff. And that's applicable to, right, acceleration, deceleration, change of direction, and top end speed. Where change of direction changes a little bit is that we have the agility component, right? For those of you who don't know, right? Change of direction is something pre-planned. You know exactly what you're going to be doing during that drill, right? Where agility, you have no idea, right? You're going to be changing direction, but you're reacting to some sort of stimulus or stimuli, right? So for our change of direction portion, right, we're going to do a skill, right? So let's say maybe it's we're working on a run step, like a lateral run step, right? So we're, if I'm a baseball player and I'm stealing a base, that'd be a lateral run step, their first step. So maybe for that, I'm doing a band resisted lateral run step, right? So I'm really breaking it down. I'm keeping it simple. They can really think about it, right? They do that. Then the drill would be maybe a lateral run step into a 5-yard sprint. Something, again, right? It's short, right? It's not going to be overly fatiguing. They can really focus on that lateral run step and how to apply the force, properly through the ground so they can turn and sprint. Then the next piece is not going to be a change of direction. It's going to be actually more of a agility, right? Where they're not thinking, they're reacting to a stimulus, right? So maybe I'm having them I'll just throw a tennis ball and they're doing lateral run step into a sprint. Maybe I'm doing 2 tennis balls, right? I'm throwing 1 tennis ball in one direction, they're going tennis ball in the other direction, and maybe they don't even know which way it is. Maybe it's going forward, backwards. I'm calling colors out. I'm doing a lot of stuff, depending on the athlete, where they are, to get them just to react, right? Yeah, we're still utilizing that skill, right, that we just learned, the lateral run step. But, I'm not going to have them be overthinking. Again, maybe 1 cue at most. But that's how we organize most of our speed work, our change of direction. Is it the best way of doing it? I don't know, maybe. But it works for us, right? It gives the athlete an opportunity, for us to communicate, coach, and also still work on being fast, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we want to be doing. But it's got to be that the reason why they come to facilities like mine is to learn, to get cued, to get coached, to have an actual program that has a thought process behind it. Not something just randomly, thrown at the wall. So next time you're going through your workout, you're doing a speed day, or maybe you're a coach, writing a program. Maybe use this, right? It may work for you. And if you have a better way of doing it, and I would love to hear about it, so obviously leave a comment below. But, my one recommendation, as I said multiple times today, is have a structured plan. So thanks for listening. See you next time.